Sabine Hoffman never believed that a single decision on an ordinary Tuesday evening would end her life. At 42, she lived in a small but cozy apartment in Hamburg-Eppendorf, just a few minutes' walk from the elementary school, where she had been working as a teacher for 18 years. Her days were structured and predictable. In the mornings she taught her third graders, in the afternoons she corrected homework, and in the evenings she sat alone in her apartment and wondered when exactly her life had become so quiet. It had been 3 years since her divorce from Thomas, 3 years in which she had learned to be alone again after 20 years of being with someone. The marriage had not ended in a dramatic argument, but had slowly faded like old photographs. At some point, they had realized that they were more roommates than spouses, that the conversations at dinner had fallen silent, that their physical contact had become mechanical. The divorce had been amicable, almost friendly. Thomas had remarried within a year to a colleague from his architecture firm. Sabine had received the news with a feeling somewhere between relief and a pang of pain she didn't want to admit. Her daughter Lena was studying medicine in Berlin and rarely came to Hamburg anymore. The apartment, once filled with Lena's music and teenage drama, now felt much too big. Sabine had friends, of course. Her colleagues met occasionally after work, and she was a member of a book club that met once a month. But the kind of loneliness she felt could not be filled by social obligations. It was the loneliness that comes when you have no one to tell about the little things of the day, no one to ask how your day was, no one whose presence breaks the silence. It was her younger sister Petra who brought up the subject of online dating one Saturday afternoon in September. They were sitting in Café Fies in Eppendorf, one of their favorite places, where they had been meeting every other Saturday for years. Petra, 5 years younger and happily married for 10 years, had put her iPhone on the table and shown Sabine the Tinder app. "Sabine, you can't stay alone forever," Petra had said as she stirred her cappuccino. "I know online dating feels strange, but that's how people meet these days. My colleague found her husband on Tinder. They've been married for 3 years now." Sabine had refused. The idea of presenting herself as a commodity that could be rated and swiped left or right felt degrading. She had met Thomas in the traditional way, at a university party 22 years ago. The world of online dating was foreign to her, and a little scary. But as the weeks passed, the loneliness became harder to ignore. Lena called every Sunday, but the conversations were brief. Her best friend, Julia Schneider, was busy with her own family. Thomas was living his new life in Munich. Sabine began to feel the silence in her apartment as something physical, something that kept her awake at night. It was a Tuesday in mid-October when Sabine finally gave in. She had just had a long day at school, a parent-teacher conference that had been difficult, and she was sitting in her kitchen with a glass of red wine. Her laptop was in front of her, and without thinking twice, she downloaded Tinder. Creating her profile felt surreal. Sabine searched through her photos and selected 5, a picture from her last summer vacation in the south of France, where she was smiling in front of a lavender field. A photo with Lena from Lena's graduation 2 years ago, a selfie she had taken recently, her short brown hair catching the autumn sunshine, a picture from her classroom surrounded by smiling children, and another from a hike in the Alps. She struggled with the bio. What did you write about yourself? Who was Sabine Hoffman if she wasn't a teacher, a mother, or an ex-wife? Finally, she wrote, "Elementary school teacher from Hamburg, love literature, hiking and good conversations, looking for a genuine connection with someone who is honest and can make me laugh. No games." She pressed save and immediately felt vulnerable. Julia had offered to help her create her profile, but Sabine had declined. This was something she had to do on her own, like jumping into cold water. The first few days on Tinder were overwhelming. Sabine received dozens of matches and messages. Some were obviously only interested in something casual, which she politely declined. Others sent inappropriate messages, which she blocked immediately. But there were also genuine conversations. A math teacher named Stefan, who shared her love of books. A doctor named Marcus, who told funny stories about his chaotic family. Then exactly 1 week after she created her profile, she received a message that was different from all the others. It was a Wednesday morning, and she was sitting in the staff room during her break when the notification popped up on her phone. "Good morning, Sabine. I hope this message finds you well. I'm Dimitrios. I saw that you love hiking. I live in Crete and spend a lot of time in the mountains here. The scenery is breathtaking, especially in the fall when the tourist crowds are gone. Maybe you could tell me about your favorite hikes." Sabine clicked on his profile. Dimitrios Papadopoulos, 44 years old, lived in Chania, Crete. His photo showed an attractive man with dark curls that were turning slightly grey, olive skin and warm brown eyes. In one photo, he was standing on a cliff overlooking the turquoise sea. Another showed him in a restaurant, smiling with a glass of wine in his hand. A third was a professional portrait in which he was wearing a suit and looking directly into the camera. There was also a photo of him with older people, presumably his parents, at a family celebration. His profile said that he owned a restaurant in Chania, that he was divorced, had no children, and was looking for someone to share his life with. He wrote that he had a passion for good food, travel and Greek culture. Sabine hesitated. A man from Greece? That seemed complicated. But something about his message felt sincere. It wasn't pushy or superficial. He had actually read her profile and referred to something specific. During her lunch break, she replied, "Hello, Dimitrios. Thank you for your message. Crete must be beautiful. I've mainly hiked in the German Alps, but I've long dreamed of visiting Greece. Tell me about your restaurant." The reply came quickly. Within an hour, Dimitrios had written back, and so began a conversation that would dominate the next few weeks of her life. Dimitrios told her about his restaurant, a small family business that his grandfather had founded in the 1960s. He described the traditional Cretan cuisine they served, the olive oils and wines from the region, the regulars who had been coming for decades. He had returned to Crete 6 years ago after his divorce, having lived in Athens for years. The marriage had remained childless, which had been a source of sadness for both of them. Sabine found herself fascinated by his life. It was so different from hers, so far away from Hamburg and the German winter, which had already set in at the beginning of November. Dimitrios asked questions about her work, her daughter, her divorce. The conversations felt easy, natural, as if they had known each other for a long time. After a week, Dimitrios suggested they talk via video call. Sabine agreed, and on a Saturday evening they sat across from each other virtually for the first time. Dimitrios was sitting on a terrace, the sun setting behind him and casting a golden light over the sea. He looked even better than his photos suggested, with laugh lines around his eyes and a warm smile that lit up his whole face. "Sabine," he said, and the way he pronounced her name, with a slight Greek accent, made her heart beat faster. "It's so nice to finally see you." They talked for 2 hours. Dimitrios told her about Crete, about the old Venetian houses in Chania, about the mountains where shepherds still herded goats, about the beaches that were crowded with tourists in summer but deserted in winter. Sabine told him about Hamburg, about the grey winters and green summers, about her work at the school, about Lena. "You have a beautiful smile," Dimitrios said toward the end of the conversation. "I wish I could see it in person." Sabine blushed. She hadn't received such attention in years. "Maybe someday," she said. "Why not soon?" Dimitrios leaned forward, his face filling the screen. "Sabine, I know this sounds crazy. We've only known each other for a week. but I feel something with you that I haven't felt in a long time. I'd like to invite you here, to Crete. Come for a few weeks, or even just a week if that's all you can take. Let me show you my world." Sabine was speechless. Fly to Greece to see a man she had only met online. That was crazy. It was irresponsible. It was exactly the kind of impulsive decision she would never make. I don't know," she stammered. "This is very sudden." "I understand," Demetrios said gently. "It's a big step. Think about it. I'm not here to pressure you. But Sabine, life is short. Sometimes you have to take a leap." After the call, Sabine sat in her apartment for a long time, staring out the window at the streets of Hamburg. It was raining, as it always did in November, and the streetlights were reflected in the puddles. She thought about her life, the routine, the loneliness, the endless grey days. She called Julia. Julia Schneider had been her closest friend since college, a lawyer with a pragmatic mind and a good heart. "Are you crazy?" was Julia's first reaction. "You don't know this man, Sabine. He could be anyone." "I know," said Sabine. "But Julia, when was the last time I did something spontaneous? When was the last time I felt alive?" Julia sighed. "I understand that you feel lonely, but flying to Greece to meet a stranger, that's dangerous. Remember the news stories? Women who meet men online and disappear? Those are extreme cases," Sabine argued, even though part of her knew Julia was right. "Demetrios told me everything about his life. I googled his restaurant. It really exists. He showed me his family. He's real." "Promise me you'll be careful," Julia finally said. "If you really want to go, give me all his information, his address, phone number, everything, and check in with me every day. Every day. Understood?" "Understood," said Sabine. The decision had been made, even if Sabine wasn't quite aware of it yet. In the weeks that followed, her communication with Demetrios intensified. They talked every day, sometimes by video, sometimes just through messages. He sent her photos of Crete, of sunsets over the sea, of his restaurant, of the narrow streets of Chania. She sent him photos of Hamburg, of her class, of autumn walks along the Ulster. Lena was less than thrilled when Sabine told her about Demetrios. "Mom, please be careful," her daughter had said on the phone. "I don't want anything to happen to you." "Nothing will happen to me," Sabine had assured her. "I'm 42, not a naive teenager." Petra was surprisingly supportive. "You know what, Sabine? Go. Live a little. You've lived for everyone else for so long. Maybe it's time to do something for yourself." At the beginning of December, Sabine booked a flight to Chania for the 23rd. The Christmas holidays started on the 20th, and she had 3 weeks off, 3 weeks in Crete, 3 weeks with a man she only knew through a screen. When she sent Julia the message, the reply came immediately. "I hope you know what you're doing, but I'm here if you need me, always." Sabine packed her suitcases with a mixture of excitement and fear. She bought new clothes, a summer dress, even though it was winter, because Demetrios had said that the weather in Crete was mild in December. She had her hair cut and colored, something she hadn't done in years. She bought a new perfume. The evening before her flight, she sat in her apartment and looked around. Everything was tidy as always. Her grading was done, her bills paid. She had given Julia, Petra and Lena all the information about Demetrios, including the address of his restaurant and his phone number. Demetrios had sent her a message. "I can't wait to see you tomorrow, Sabine. This will be the beginning of something wonderful." Sabine read the message and smiled. Maybe Demetrios was right. Maybe this was the beginning of something wonderful. Maybe she would finally find the connection she had longed for. What Sabine couldn't know, what she couldn't possibly have guessed, was that in 43 hours she would understand exactly what kind of connection Demetrios really meant. She couldn't know that the man whose warm smile had enchanted her through the screen had already set a trap that had been planned for weeks. On the morning of December 23rd, Sabine stood at Hamburg airport, her suitcase beside her, looking at the departure gate. Her heart was racing. She sent one last message to Julia. "I'm boarding now. Let's talk tonight." Then she went through security, boarded the plane, and flew south, toward the sun, toward a man who promised to give her everything she wanted. She was flying toward her death. But that would only become apparent in 90 days, 90 days during which her family would search desperately for her, 90 days during which the police in 2 countries would work to find out what had happened to Sabine Hoffmann. 90 days until only her remains were found, hidden in a place where no one should have found them. This is the story of Sabine Hoffmann, a woman who thought she had found love, but instead found her killer. The plane landed in Chania in the late afternoon. Through the small window, Sabine could see the Cretan landscape, rugged mountains silhouetted against a cloudless sky, and the Mediterranean Sea glistening in the December sun. The temperature was mild, almost 64 degrees, a stark contrast to the 34 degrees she had left behind in Hamburg. Her heart beat faster as she walked down the gangway. After weeks of video calls and messages, she would finally meet Dimitrios in person. She was wearing the new blue dress she had bought especially for this moment, and her hands were clammy with nervousness. The arrivals hall was small and manageable. Sabine picked up her suitcase from the conveyor belt and went through customs. Dozens of people were waiting behind the glass doors, taxi drivers with signs, families picking up relatives, tour guides with colorful flags. And then she saw him. Dimitrios was standing at the edge of the crowd, and when their eyes met, his face lit up. He was taller than she had expected, perhaps 6 feet tall, with broad shoulders under a white shirt. He was wearing dark jeans and leather shoes, and his hair was slightly longer than in the videos. He smiled, and for a moment Sabine forgot all of Julia and Lena's warnings. "Sabine," he said as she approached him. His voice was deeper, warmer than it had been through the computer screen. He opened his arms, and she fell into an embrace that felt surprisingly familiar. He smelled of citrus and something earthy, perhaps olive oil. "You're really here," he whispered into her hair. "I can hardly believe it." Sabine laughed nervously. "Me neither." He took her suitcase and led her to the parking lot where a white Jeep was waiting. The drive to Chania took 20 minutes, and Dimitrios talked the whole time. He pointed out sights, told stories about Venetian architecture, about the battles in World War II, about the olive groves they passed. "My family has been making olive oil for 4 generations, he said. "I'll show you the olive trees tomorrow. They're 100 years old, some even older." Sabine nodded and smiled, but part of her was overwhelmed. Everything was so different, so foreign. The language on the street signs, the landscape, even the way Dimitrios drove, with a casualness that would be unthinkable in Germany. Chania was beautiful. The old town consisted of narrow streets with Venetian and Turkish buildings, colorful balconies, and small taverns. The old harbor was picturesque, with its characteristic lighthouse and colorful fishing boats bobbing gently in the water. Dimitrios parked in front of a 3-story building with an ochre-colored facade. "This is my home," he said. "The bottom 2 floors of the restaurant. I live upstairs." He carried her suitcase up the steep stairs. The apartment was surprisingly spacious, with high ceilings and large windows overlooking the sea. The furnishings were simple but tasteful. White walls, dark wood furniture, plants everywhere. "I've prepared the guest room for you," Dimitrios said, opening a door. The room was small but clean, with a single bed, a wardrobe, and a window overlooking the mountains. Sabine felt a wave of relief, a room of her own. She had wondered if Dimitrios would have expectations, but he was respectful, giving her space. "Rest," he said. "Later, I'll show you the restaurant and we'll eat together. Nothing exciting today. You must be tired from the flight." When he closed the door, Sabine sat down on the bed and took out her phone. A message from Julia was waiting. "Did you arrive? Everything okay?" Sabine typed back, "Yes, everything's fine. Dimitrios picked me up. The apartment is nice. I have my own room. Chania is beautiful. I'll be in touch tomorrow." She lay down for an hour, but sleep did not come. Instead, she lay there listening to the unfamiliar sounds, the cry of seagulls, the murmur of Greek voices from the street, the distant sound of bouzouki music. In the evening, Dimitrios took her downstairs to the restaurant. It was still closed, not opening until 8 o'clock. The room was warm and inviting, with about 20 tables, traditional tapestries, and family photos on the walls. "That's my grandfather," Dimitrios said, pointing to a black and white photo of a man with a thick mustache. "He started it all. My father continued it, and now I do." He cooked for them in the restaurant kitchen. Grilled octopus, tacos with fresh tomatoes and feta cheese, slow braised lamb with herbs. They drank Cretan wine, dark red and strong. "This is the best food I've ever had," Sabine said honestly. The flavors were intense. Every ingredient tasted of sun and earth. Dimitrios beamed. "Wait until you've tried the other dishes. I'm going to spoil you over the next few weeks." They ate slowly, drank the wine, and Dimitrios told more stories. About his childhood in Crete, about the summers he had spent on the beach, about his failed marriage. His wife had left him for another man, a banker from Athens. "It hurt," he admitted, "but now I understand that we weren't meant for each other. Maybe I had to lose her to find you." Sabine blushed. It was exactly what she wanted to hear. But later, as she lay in bed, she couldn't stop thinking about Julia's warnings. Was it all too perfect? Too easy? The first few days in Crete were like a dream. Dimitrios took time off from the restaurant and showed her the island. They drove to the pink beaches of Elafonisi, where the water was so clear that you could see every stone on the bottom. They visited the Arkadi monastery, where Dimitrios told her about the Cretan revolution against the Ottomans. They hiked in the White Mountains, and Sabine felt more alive than she had in years. But little things began to worry her. Dimitrios was attentive, almost too attentive. He always wanted to know where she was, who she was talking to. Once, when Sabine wanted to take a walk to the harbor alone, he insisted on accompanying her. "Chania is safe, but you don't know your way around," he had said. "I don't want you to get lost." He also checked her phone, not obviously, but he constantly asked who she was texting, what Julia had said, whether Lena had called. Once, when Sabine received a message from a male colleague in Hamburg, Dimitrios's expression darkened. "Who is that?" he had asked, his voice suddenly sharp. "A colleague," Sabine had replied. "He's just wishing me a Merry Christmas." "Just a colleague?" Dimitrios had taken the phone from her hand and read the message. Then he had smiled, but the smile didn't reach his eyes. "I'm sorry. I'm too protective sometimes." After 2 weeks, Dimitrios suggested that Sabine extend her stay. 3 weeks isn't enough," he said, as they sat on his terrace watching the sunset. "Stay longer. Stay the whole winter." "I have a job," Sabine said with a laugh. "I can't just stay away." "Why not?" Dimitrios took her hand. "Sabine, I think we have something special. I want more time with you. Call your school. Say you're sick, or better yet, quit. Stay here with me." "That's crazy," Sabine said, but part of her was tempted. Her life in Hamburg felt so far away, so grey and meaningless compared to this one. "Is it crazy to be happy?" Dimitrios asked. At the end of the 3rd week, Sabine called her school and asked for an extension of her vacation for personal reasons. The principal was not thrilled, but agreed to give her another 4 weeks. Julia was horrified. "Sabine, what are you doing? You hardly know this man." "I know him better than you think," Sabine had shot back. "Julia, I'm happy for the first time in years. Can't you understand that?" But the truth was that Sabine herself had doubts. Dimitrios was becoming more possessive. He didn't want her to leave the house alone. He read her messages. Once she had caught him searching through her luggage. "I was looking for a charger," he had explained, but Sabine didn't believe him. In the 6th week, something happened that should have warned Sabine. They were in a restaurant when a young tourist, a German woman, came in. She spoke to Dimitrios in German, and suddenly his face hardened. "I don't know you," he said coldly in Greek. "Leave my restaurant." The woman left, confused, and when Sabine asked what that was about, Dimitrios simply said, "People from my past, it doesn't matter." But it did matter. Sabine began to investigate. She Googled Dimitrios's name, his restaurant, and found reviews that were strange. Some praised the food, others warned about the owner, describing him as aggressive and controlling. Then she found an article in a Greek newspaper from 3 years ago. A German tourist had disappeared in Crete. She was last seen in Chania. The case had never been solved. Sabine felt ice water running through her veins. She had to get out of here, but when she tried to book a flight, she realized her passport was gone. Sabine searched her room for the 3rd time. The passport wasn't there. She had kept it in the top drawer, between her sweaters. Now the drawer was empty. "Dimitrios," she called, her voice trembling. "Have you seen my passport?" He came up the stairs, his face a mask of concern. "Your passport?" "No. Why?" "It's gone. I have to go back to Hamburg. The school called. They need me." Dimitrios sat down on the bed and took her hands. "Sabine, calm down. We'll find it. Maybe you put it somewhere else." But Sabine saw something in his eyes. A flicker. Triumph? Calculation? "You took it," she whispered. His grip on her hands tightened. "Why would I do that?" "Let me go." Sabine tried to free herself, but he held her tight. "Sabine, you're not going anywhere." His voice was cold now, completely different from the warm tone she knew. "You're staying here with me?" "You're crazy," Sabine screamed and tried to get to the door, but Dimitrios was faster. He blocked the exit. "I didn't bring you all this way just so you could leave," he said. "Don't you understand? We belong together. I'll never let you go." Sabine reached for her phone on the nightstand, but Dimitrios snatched it out of her hand. He threw it against the wall, where it shattered into pieces. "No more calls," he said calmly. "No messages to Julia. No cries for help." "The police will look for me," Sabine said, tears streaming down her face. "My family knows where I am." Dimitrios laughed. "Your family thinks you're happy in Crete. I'll text them from your phone. Everything is fine. Sabine is extending her vacation. She is in love." He pulled her phone out of his pocket. He had had it all along. Sabine understood. This had been planned. From the beginning. The romantic messages, the video calls, the invitation. It was all a trap. "What do you want from me?" she whispered. Dimitrios caressed her face and she flinched. "I want you. Forever. You're going to stay here, and you're going to learn to love me. Just like the others." "And the others?" Sabine's voice was barely audible. "The German tourist. She tried to leave too. That was a mistake." He smiled, and in that moment, Sabine saw the monster behind the mask. Dimitrios left the room and locked the door. Sabine heard the key turn in the lock. She was trapped. In a foreign country, without a passport, without a phone, without anyone knowing she was in danger. The sun set over Chania, and Sabine Hoffman realized she had made a terrible mistake. But it was too late, far too late. The first weeks of her captivity blurred into a never-ending nightmare. Dimitrios kept her locked in the small room, brought her food and water, but hardly spoke to her. The window had been barred from the outside. She noticed when she tried to open it. "Go ahead and scream," he said one evening when he brought her dinner. "The walls are thick. No one will hear you. And even if they do, they'll think you're my crazy German girlfriend who's had too much to drink." Sabine screamed anyway, until her voice was hoarse. No one came. Dimitrios skillfully used her phone. Every other day he sent messages to Julia, to Petra, to Lena, cheerful messages about beaches and sunsets, about how wonderful everything was. He had photos of Sabine from the first few weeks and used them to maintain the illusion. "Mom is enjoying Greece," he wrote to Lena. "I need a little more time here, maybe another month." Julia became suspicious. "You sound different," she wrote. "Call me. I want to hear your voice." Dimitrios forced Sabine to call Julia. He stood next to her, knife in hand, while she spoke. "Everything's fine," Sabine said in a trembling voice, desperately trying to send a signal. "I'm just tired. The sun is so intense here. Sabine, are you sure everything's okay?" Julia sounded concerned. Dimitrios pressed the knife closer to Sabine's side. "Yes, really. I'll be in touch soon." She hung up before Julia could ask any more questions. Weeks turned into months. Sabine lost hope. She tried to escape once when Dimitrios left the door open. She ran down the stairs, almost reaching the street, but he caught her and dragged her back upstairs. The punishment was brutal. He locked her up for 3 days without food, only water. "You don't learn," he said coldly, "but you will learn." In the 3rd month something changed. Sabine grew weaker, thinner. She had stopped fighting. Dimitrios seemed to like that. "See," he said as he stroked her hair, "it's better when you obey. We could be happy together." But then Dimitrios made a mistake. One morning in March, he didn't come with food. The hours passed. Sabine heard voices downstairs, police sirens. Her heart began to race. Had someone found her? The door remained locked. The voices receded. Silence returned. When Dimitrios came back in the evening, he looked angry. "Your family has contacted the German embassy," he hissed. "They're looking for you. The police were here, but I told them you had gone to Athens." "They'll find me," Sabine whispered. Dimitrios' eyes darkened. "No," he said quietly, "they won't." That night, Sabine understood that he was going to kill her. The only question was, when? In Hamburg, Julia Schneider grew more desperate every day. The messages on Sabine's phone were too perfect, too impersonal. She had known her friend for 25 years. That wasn't Sabine's writing style. She contacted Petra. Together they went to the police in Hamburg. "Missing person case," they said. "A woman in Greece, possibly in danger." The German police worked with the Greek authorities. Detective Nikos Stavros in Crete took on the case. He visited Dimitrios's restaurant on March 13th. "Where is Sabine Hoffman?" Stavros asked. "She went to Athens," Dimitrios replied calmly. "She wanted to see more of Greece. We had argued. She left alone." Stavros didn't believe him, but without evidence, there was nothing he could do. He asked the neighbors questions. No one had seen Sabine in weeks. In the locked room, Sabine heard the voices. She hammered on the wall, screamed, but the thick stone walls swallowed every sound. When she heard the police leave, she collapsed. That had been her last chance. Dimitrios came home late that night. He was carrying a bottle of wine and 2 glasses. His face was expressionless. "I've been thinking," he said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. "About us, about everything." He poured wine. "Drink with me, one last time." Sabine took the glass with trembling hands. She knew what was coming. She saw it in his eyes. "You were different from the others," Dimitrios said quietly. "I really thought you could stay, but you're like everyone else. You want to leave." "Dimitrios, please." "Drink," he ordered. Sabine drank. The wine tasted bitter. After a few minutes she felt dizzy. The room began to spin. "What have you—" She couldn't finish the sentence. Darkness overtook her. When she woke up, it was pitch black. She was no longer in bed. The floor beneath her was cold and stony. She couldn't move. Her hands were tied. "Dimitrios?" Her voice was weak. There was no answer. Hours passed. Or was it days? In the darkness, Sabine lost all sense of time. She drifted between consciousness and unconsciousness. Her thirst became unbearable. After a while, her hunger disappeared. She thought of Lena, of her daughter whom she would never see again, of Julia who had known that something was wrong, of all the moments in her life that she had taken for granted. She thought about how she had downloaded Tinder that October evening. A simple decision, a swipe to the right, and now she would die here in a dark room somewhere in Crete, alone and forgotten. Sabine Hoffman closed her eyes and waited for the end. It came slowly, but it came. After 90 days, Detective Stavros couldn't forget Dimitrios Papadopoulos. Something about this case was gnawing at him. He spoke to more neighbors, restaurant patrons, tourists. An old woman who lived across the street mentioned casually, "Sometimes I hear strange noises coming from his basement at night, and 3 years ago there was also a German woman. She disappeared too." Stavros applied for a search warrant. On March 22nd, a team searched the restaurant and the apartment above it. They found nothing in the visible rooms. Then a young officer discovered a hidden door behind a shelf in the basement. It led to an old storage room that must have been sealed for years. The smell hit them first. Stavros didn't need forensic analysis to know what they had found. In the corner of the damp room, hastily hidden under old sacks, lay human remains. The DNA analysis took a week. The results confirmed Sabine Hoffman. Dimitrios was arrested the same day. At first he denied everything, but the evidence was overwhelming. Sabine's fingerprints in the locked room, her passport in his safe, traces of her blood in the basement. Under pressure, he confessed, not only to Sabine's murder but also to that of the German tourist 3 years ago. Both times, the pattern was the same. Lure women via dating apps, bring them to Crete, hold them captive. They all wanted to leave, he said emotionlessly during the interrogation. I couldn't let them go. They belonged to me. The news reached Julia on a grey April morning. She broke down on the phone. Petra screamed. Lena, who was taking her final exams, drove to Hamburg and couldn't stop crying for 3 days. I knew it, Julia said over and over again. I should have done more. I should have stopped her. But no one could have stopped Sabine. She had been looking for love, for connection, for a way out of her loneliness, like millions of people on dating apps worldwide. The trial in Greece lasted 6 months. Dimitrios Papadopoulos was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of early release. Sabine's remains were transferred to Germany. The funeral took place in Hamburg on a rainy June day. Hundreds of people came, students, colleagues, parents, friends. Lena gave a speech. My mother was not a naive person. She was intelligent, cautious, loving. She only did what we all do. She searched for happiness. It is not her fault that this led to her demise. It is the fault of a monster who had learned how to abuse trust. After Sabine's death, Julia set up a foundation called Sabine's Voice, which educates people about the dangers of online dating and helps women recognize warning signs. Sabine's gravestone reads, Sabine Hoffman, 1982-2024. Beloved mother, sister, friend. You sought love and found betrayal. We will never forget you. 3 years later, Lena graduates from medical school. At the ceremony, an empty chair is reserved for her mother. The pain never completely fades. But Sabine's story is told again and again as a warning and a reminder that behind every charming profile, every friendly message, every invitation to paradise, hell can lurk, and that 90 days can be everything that lies between hope and horror.